Hello, everybody. Welcome to Squibler's weekly webinar series. This week, we're going to take a look at how you can publish your writing, or at least get it out to people who can publish it for you, by writing the synopsis and the treatment. Synopsis is for novels and books, and treatments are for screenplays. So in this webinar, you're going to learn what a synopsis is and then what a film treatment is. We'll look at some tips for crafting a synopsis and then tips for a treatment. There is some crossover between the two. And we'll look at some tips to help you get this going using Squibler's AI to write your synopsis or treatment. I think you'll really like some of the capabilities that will help you and save you some time. So for a synopsis, this is for your book, fiction or nonfiction. And if you plan to submit your book to publishers or to agents, both of them are generally going to want to see a one-page synopsis of your work so they can see what your book is about. We do have some tips to help you write your synopsis, and the AI, like I said, in Squibler has got tools that'll make this a lot easier for you as well. So tip number one, you want to keep it short. You're not going to impress anybody by turning in a 15-page synopsis. Most agents and publishers, they have to read through a lot of emails, a lot of books, and a lot of synopses. They don't have time or interest in reading a long, drawn-out synopsis of your project, so you want to keep it short. Ideally, you shouldn't exceed more than one page so they can glance through it quickly, decide if you have a good story, and if they want to see your work. You can create a synopsis draft in Squibler and then make sections shorter if necessary with the rewrite, make it shorter function of the Smart Writer. So if you feel like you're really struggling to keep it within a page, we have tools that can help you do that. The second tip is to make sure you understand your book's purpose. The synopsis is going to give agents and publishers a clear overview of your book's storyline or subject matter, its major themes, the genre, and your writing style. It should entice them to want to read more, but it also should be clear what they're going to find in your manuscript. And theme does not equal plot. So what is your book about? That's a big question for you to answer for yourself. So for example, The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien's famous book, is an epic fantasy about a battle between good and evil and the power of friendship, where the fate of humanity lies in the hands of an unexpected hero. So we get the idea here. We have a battle between good and evil and the power of friendship. So that's the conflict and the theme. You also want to make sure that you summarize and don't tease. You want to avoid writing your synopsis like a book blurb with cliffhangers or questions. So in other words, you don't want to write anything like, will Bridget Jones finally find love? The agent needs to understand the full scope of the story, including the ending. You have to answer that question. Yes, Bridget Jones will find love. This almost sounds counterintuitive, especially if you're writing thrillers or mysteries, but the agent doesn't want to grasp at the meaning. They want to see that you have this sorted out and you have an ending, a concrete ending for your readers. So you want to make sure you summarize major plot points, characters, and themes. Another good tip is to open with a hook. You want to begin with a central premise or hook that captures the essence of your story or nonfiction topic. And this is something we've learned when we were writing even in middle school and before. We want to capture our reader and make them want to read more. In fiction, you do want to mention the protagonist and their central conflict. In nonfiction, you want to explain the core thesis or subject. For fiction, another tip is you want to focus on the main characters. Stick to just a handful of primary characters. Explain who they are, what drives them, and their relationship to the plot. You don't want to overwhelm the synopsis with too many names. You don't have enough space in one page to go through every character's side quest. So think about something like the Game of Thrones series by George Martin. He's not going to write a synopsis that tells you about each character. He's going to have to do a wide overview of what the first book, the second book, the third book is going to contain. You also want to make sure you show the conflict and the stakes. The agent and publisher should understand what's at stake for your protagonist if you're writing fiction. You want to clarify the central conflict and how it escalates towards a resolution. So there is kind of a formula you can follow for this. So faced with conflict, the protagonist has to battle or face a problem before consequence happens. So I'm again going to use Lord of the Rings. Faced with the regeneration of the evil Lord Sauron, small hobbit Frodo Baggins must face a host of terrifying foes before the Dark Lord takes over Middle-earth. So that's pretty easy to understand. We know what the stakes are here for Frodo and for Middle-earth. Tip number 7 for synopses are to include the ending. The agents do expect to know how your story concludes. This isn't a choose your own adventure for them. For fiction, you want to describe how major conflicts are going to be resolved in your book. And for nonfiction, you want to explain the conclusion or the practical implications of the work, what you're adding to the discussion on a topic. It's a good idea also to understand your reader expectations for endings in the same genre as yours. So what's going to satisfy readers of a romance? What's going to satisfy readers of a fantasy, or the people who like reading memoirs? What do they expect to get out of them by the time they have finished reading a book? That will help you sort of think about how you can pitch your book to an agent or publisher and how you're going to write about your ending. Tip number 8, you definitely want to be objective in tone. The synopsis needs to be written in a neutral, objective tone, even for emotional and dramatic stories, even if it's something really sad or really emotional. You want to avoid over-exaggeration or overly personal language. And this also holds true for nonfiction, including memoirs. Pretend that you're writing a Wikipedia entry on your project. And you can even read the plot synopses for famous memoirs, famous novels, and nonfiction works as a model for how you can write yours. In other words, you can go to Wikipedia, look up a famous book in the same genre, look at how the synopsis is written, because it is written in an objective tone. You can also tweak your draft of your synopsis when you go to edit by using the objective tone in your synopsis with the guided writer. Number 9, make sure you know your genre. Different genres require different elements in a synopsis. For example, in a mystery or thriller, you want to emphasize the plot twists and the suspense. In romance, you want to highlight the struggles the protagonists have about their relationship. In nonfiction, you want to focus on the research, the structure, and the unique insights that you're going to bring with your study. The next tip for writing a synopsis is you want to make sure you polish for clarity and flow. You want to edit your synopsis to ensure it's clear. This is a chance for you to put your work in front of an agent or a publisher. There's no excuse for having grammatical or spelling errors in it. It also should be free of jargon, especially for nonfiction, and it should be easy to read. Agents are looking for polished professional writing, so any awkward phrasing or unclear points can weaken your submission. And I would run the grammar and spell check a few times before you submit it. So there are some ways to use Squibler's AI to write your summary, and I'm going to show you that briefly. We're going to use the summary tool and the guided writer as in the Smart Writer, and we'll look at how to get a draft of your synopsis. So here's what you're going to do. What I've done here is put in, I'm pretending I'm rewriting Romeo and Juliet. And so I'm using the guided writer, and you'll see them on chapter 1. I've moved my cursor to the end, and I'm going to put on the guided writer, write a short summary of this chapter. I'll put the elements I want in here, the main elements, Romeo and Juliet, of course. Toggle my creativity level. You absolutely want the tone to be objective. And then pick your narrative perspective, which for this would, because it's a novel, would be third person. From there, I've already gotten this to generate it for me. You'll see that it's generated a chapter summary for me that's pretty short. Romeo, a young Italian Renaissance man, and Juliet find themselves entangled in a forbidden love, and their families locked in a bitter feud. Their love, a rebellious act, becomes a beacon of hope in a world of animosity. So what I can do here is take just that one section and put it into the summary function here at the top. Go here. So I can put this, what it's generated in the summary function for each chapter. So I can just copy and paste for each chapter, have it generate a summary for me. And at the end, I can copy all of those summaries that I put with my chapters into a new document, and then I'll have a synopsis that I've started. So it's really nice that this is an available tool that you can use to generate synopsis, both for your books, if you're writing books, or as a treatment for your screenplay. So those are some tips for the synopsis. For the film treatment, it is a brief summary, like the synopsis is, on what your screenplay is about. And also like the book synopsis, the purpose is to give an agent or a production company the main points about your script. It should be as compelling as it is selling your script to the reader. So it needs to be really tight and compelling for them. A film treatment is a detailed narrative summary of the screenplay. It's written in prose form, and it's going to outline the key elements of the story. It's going to include your major plot points, the characters, and major scenes, just like a synopsis would for a novel, but it doesn't have detailed dialogue or scene-by-scene formatting that scripts do. And treatments are generally between 2 to 10 pages. If you look at someone like Stanley Kubrick's treatment for The Shining, however, his is very long and he has just a little bit on each page. So it does vary depending on the production company, the director, and who wants the treatment and what they're planning to do with it. So typically, these are written in present tense, and they're going to provide a clear overview of the story structure, beginning, middle, and end. That's going to allow the readers, producers, and agents to understand the flow and the tone of the project. The treatment also is going to capture the essential essence of the film. It's going to highlight the protagonist's journey, the central conflict, and the resolution, while still giving a sense of the genre and themes and emotional beats that you would feel if you were watching the film. So here are some tips for writing a treatment. The treatment serves as a sales document, and it's going to give the agent or producer an overview of your story. And as we just said, it should convey the plot, the main characters. You should get a feel for the tone of the film when you're reading the treatment, and the themes, and these should also showcase your storytelling style. And the readers, just like with novels, should know the meat of your story immediately. What is the theme? What is the movie about? Just like with novel synopses, with the film treatment, you do want to keep these concise. They're generally between 2 to 5 pages. As I've said, some of them can run a little bit longer, but you do want to keep them brief. Focus on the main point and the character arcs, and avoid getting bogged down in subplots or excessive detail. You really have to be concise here and cut anything that's unnecessary. Another thing to do is to start with a log line. You want to open with a brief, punchy log line that captures the essence of your story in 1 to 2 sentences. This is going to give the reader a quick sense of the protagonist, their goal, and the central conflict. We do have another webinar on writing log lines and writing pitches. If you want to watch one of those, they're available on YouTube and here in the Discord channel on Discord. We have a resource library. So you can also look to that for some guidance for writing a log line. You can also find the log lines on imdb.com and use these samples in your genre to write yours. In other words, if you're writing a fantasy, take a look at how fantasy films write their log lines. If it's drama, take a look at how dramatic films write their log lines. Here's an example from a child's film, from The Lion King. This is from IMDb. Lion Prince Simba and his father are targeted by his bitter uncle who wants to ascend the throne himself. So that pretty much tells you what the conflict is, who the major characters are, and what the movie is about. You also want to write in present tense, just like a screenplay. So you want to use he runs, he races, they climb, everything. The subject should be doing the action of the verb. This is going to help create a sense of immediacy, and it's going to keep the reader engaged in the unfolding story. You can find a lot of successful film treatments online with a Google search. They're not difficult to find, and they're the exact ones that famous writers and directors have used to create their films. You also want to introduce key characters early. That's the importance of the log line. You want to talk about them and make clear who they are, what motivates them, and how they relate to the plot. We know from that brief summary on The Lion King, from the log line of Lion King, that the antagonist wants the throne for himself. We know that the king and his son are in conflict with him, and that's just one sentence. We get a lot of the story there. Avoid giving too much backstory. You want to focus on what's essential to the main story. The next tip is to highlight the core conflict. You want to identify the central conflict that drives your story. Whether it's an internal struggle or an external obstacle, it should be clear and compelling, as it forms the backbone of your screenplay. After your reader has read your treatment, they should be able to put it down, not look at it, and categorize the conflict after their first read. In other words, they should be able to say, this screenplay is a man versus man conflict. It's man versus machine, like The Matrix, and so forth. So make sure it's very clear to your readers that the conflict is one of these. You also might want to break down the 3 acts. Of course, there are 3-act and 5-act screenplays, and we have a webinar on that if you're interested as well. But most treatments will simplify it and follow the 3-act structure, the beginning, middle, and end. So that's another thing that's good to have written down for yourself. Summarize what happens in each act. Act 1, you're introducing your character, setting, and your conflict. Act 2, you're escalating the conflict, raising the stakes and challenges. So what happens in your second act? In Act 3, we see the climax and resolution, including how our characters have changed. Viewers are very interested in seeing what people learn from their experiences. So all of these things should be in your treatment. The next tip is to focus on visual and emotional impact. And this is very different from novels because screenplays are tied into a visual field, into filmmaking. So while a screenplay treatment is not as detailed as a script, it should still have key visual elements and emotional beats in it. So you want to highlight scenes or moments that give the reader a sense of the tone and style and cinematic experience. For example, a treatment like that for Titanic would describe the epic scene of watching the ship strike the iceberg. If you're reading a treatment like that, you know immediately what you're going to see on screen. The next tip is to reveal the ending, and this is similar to the book synopsis. Don't leave the reader in suspense. You should reveal your ending. Agents and producers, just like agents who read books, they want to know how the story resolves, including the fate of the characters and the resolution of the main conflict. As with books, it's important to know viewer expectations of the genre you're writing. Where horror film buffs might be satisfied with an unsettled ending, fans of romantic comedies will not be. So you want to make sure you know what viewer expectations are going to be for films as well. You do want to keep your tone consistent. This is similar to the synopsis for books. It should match the tone of your screenplay. If your screenplay is a comedy, the treatment should have a light, humorous touch. If it's drama, it should feel serious and emotionally engaging. You do want to get a sense of the writer's voice in a treatment. You want to know what you're going to be expecting with the writing. So once again, you can use Squibler's AI to write your summary. You can use the guided writer in the Smart Writer to ask for a summary of your acts and then use that to develop a draft of your treatment. After that, again, as I showed you before, you can put it into the summary function here for each section. So that's really going to help you and save you a lot of time when you're working on your treatment. It is important to have your work divided into acts or folders for this because you can refer to it as Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and Act 4 when you're requesting a summary from the guided writer. We are going to upload this webinar into our Discord server, into the resources library with 2 free worksheets. There will be a worksheet to help you write your novel or nonfiction synopsis, and there will also be one for writing the screenplay treatment. Hope you enjoy them. And we really enjoyed having you here, and we reviewed what a synopsis is, what a film treatment is. We looked at some tips for crafting a synopsis and treatment, and we looked at some tips for using Squibler's AI to write your treatment or synopsis. I think it's really going to make your task a lot easier. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a great week and happy writing to everybody. Thanks for being here.